Radovid had many faults. He was cruel, impetuous, and pathologically ambitious. But he was a tactical genius, that's undeniable. Commanding forces far outnumbered by his foes, he handily defeated the invader from the south. The Redanian eagle spread its wings, taking all the north, including Novigrad, beneath them. With victory in the war against Nilfgaard secured, Radovid proceeded to complete his witch hunt. As they had in Novigrad, pyres burned in Temeria and Aedirn, lands now liberated by the Redanian monarch. In the drive for moral renewal, simple herbalists, pellers, healers, and non-humans, all supposed heretics, were murdered in droves. For many, freedom beneath Radovid's scepter proved more tragic than servitude to another. The Third Northern War was a clash between two great strategists, Radovid V, known as the Stern, and Emhyr var Emreis. Both seemed invincible, yet both were defeated. Nilfgaard, invading from the south, was repelled in the field, while the North's supreme leader fell victim to assassins. Yet Redania stood victorious, and a man who had thus far operated in shadow took up the reins of power. That man was Sigismund Dijkstra. Once firmly in the Chancellor's seat, Dijkstra ruled the victorious North in his patently cynical and ruthless manner. He knew that to preserve peace, he would need to prepare for war. Following Nilfgaard's example, he consolidated his rule over vast lands through a broad program of settlement and industrialization, all for the good of his subjects, though often contrary to their will. The Third Northern War ended. The invader from the south achieved complete victory. Robbed of Radovid's tactical genius, the northern realms could not withstand Emhyr's countless legions. Black banners appeared over Novigrad and all Redania. Weary of rebel raids, Emhyr var Emreis conceded, restoring Temeria as a realm in liege to the Empire. When the guerrillas laid down their arms, the Emperor shifted his forces to other fronts. Through Nilfgaard's victory, Temerians got their country back, and history, once again, proved a consummate trickster. Having dealt with Radovid, Emhyr var Emreis did the same with enemies domestic. The Emperor's loyal spies named all who had conspired against him, traitors, soldiers, and aristocrats alike. Though their mutiny had only been a murky plan, the Emperor showed no mercy, as was his wont. As long as his armies went from one victory to the next, Emhyr's subjects remained boundlessly obedient. When a string of humiliating defeats proved var Emreis fallible, the opposition, thus far secret, attacked. The subjects of the Emperor who had danced on the graves of his foes laid him to rest in a tomb of his own. Many islanders believed Svanrige would be no more than his ambitious mother's puppet. The young king proved them wrong, ignoring her whims and ruling with an iron hand all his own. Tired of the Jarls and their endless feuds, he resolved to turn the Isles into an absolute monarchy, modeled after those of the continent. What he resolved he achieved, but only by shedding his countrymen's blood. Though the war on the continent had ended, Hjalmar refused to lay down his arms. The young king pledged to raid and burn the shores of the Empire of Nilfgaard each spring. He meant to keep his word, even at the cost of drowning his people in their own blood. While the continent bled engulfed by war, Skellige bloomed under Ceres's enlightened rule. Unlike those who had come before her, the young queen did not raid foreign shores, looking instead to her people, tending to her land. The island-bound nation prospered, though its fangs of yore were dulled. Cirilla, Fiona, Ellen, Rhiannon, heir to Nilfgaard's throne, chose the life of a witcher on the path. Geralt taught her all he knew, every skill he possessed, then each set off on their own. Soon word of the ashen-haired witcheress had spread throughout the north, from the Yaruga to the mountains of Kovir. As for Ciri, that's hard to say. Since the events on Undvik, she is yet to be seen. After years in exile, Ciri returned to Nilfgaard, her paternal home. where Emhyr prepared to name her his successor. The woman had the necessary qualities. From her father, she'd inherited an empress's political instincts. From Geralt, she had gained a sense of simple human decency. Few monarchs boast both traits, which is quite a shame. And what of Geralt, you might ask? Well, he continued on as before, living hand to mouth, job to job, on the road, ever coinless. We would meet at times over a glass of strong drink to talk about the old days and speculate what could have, would have, might have been. While monarchs moved borders and populations, Geralt and Yennefer lived a calm, quiet life, far from all things political. They breakfasted well after noon, more often than not in bed, and passed the days on lazy strolls and long conversations. Boring, you say? Perhaps. But both had sought this more than anything else. Hard as it may be to believe, Geralt planted roots in faraway Kovir. He and Triss settled down, their home warm and smelling of freshly baked cakes. Guests were always welcome, no matter the day or the hour. The Witcher would take jobs at times more from habit than need, for Triss earned a true fortune as the mage advisor to Kovir's king.
Witchers were made to kill monsters. It doesn't matter who posted the notice. The coin has to be right, that's all. Witchers don't debate. Their conscience plays no part. They just get on with it, then pick up the coin pouch tossed at their feet and set off on their way. Folk don't expect Witchers to save them from themselves. If I'm to choose between a greater and lesser evil, I'd rather not choose at all. Usually though, the stakes are just too damn high. Sometimes in choosing a greater evil, you do good, albeit in a small way. When I chose to save the orphans of the swamp, I couldn't know Anna would die. And I never thought the Baron would leave his wife where she lay, find a rope and hang himself. Most times, you make your choice and never look back. Long ago, to isolate themselves from a world of beasts, humans began building cities. But since beasts prowl within stone walls as well as they do outside them, this did not allay human fears. The truth is, walls guarantee no one's safety. The place where you lock yourself in and lock all else out, that's not your home. Your home is sometimes a place you travel long and far to find. They say ghosts are a manifestation of inner fears. Hauntings are said to be longing and loneliness grown to vast proportions. There's no truth to that. It is true, however, that monsters can be as lonely as humans, and that to conquer one's loneliness, one must first conquer one's fears. Some manage to do just that. Few can refuse a sorceress, and Keira Metz certainly had her ways. But when she demanded the Mage Alexander's notes, I had to turn her down. Keira needed that, as she needed the impetus to start anew. She found it where she least expected to. Years later, known for discovering the cure for the Catriona plague, she was thankful none remembered her time in hiding as a village witch. Keira Metz was manipulative, a schemer, and loved every minute of it. She was also stubborn, even for a sorceress, but she had quite the gift. Boy, could she be convincing. Deep down, though, Keira was a little girl. She expected far too much of life and demanded instant satisfaction. Little girls end badly when they fall in with the wrong crowd. Orson Jr. wasn't a pious man, but there came a moment when he prayed to all the gods at once for his life. Since the gods disliked Jr., they granted his prayer. Years later, he had just one regret, that at the moment in question, he hadn't surrendered to death, for he had had the courage then to do so, courage he would never have again. No one mourned for Orson Jr. In all his miserable life, he'd never helped a soul. Amusingly, once dead, he became a useful member of society. They say everyone deserves a second chance. Seems true enough. Orson got his, in a way, sharing it with a Doppler named Dudu. Hatred and prejudice will never be eradicated, and witch hunts will never be about witches. To have a scapegoat, that's the key. Humans always fear the alien, the odd. Once the mages had left Novigrad, folk turned their anger against the other races. And as they have for ages, branded their neighbors their greatest foes. Street-side soothsayers, chiromancers, herbalists and healers. Though townsfolk had always sought their help, they'd never trusted them. Folk generally disliked those privy to their fears and weaknesses. The free city of Novigrad became a trap for all mages. Its merchants, craftsmen, and burghers held their breath when death came for those they despised. And they never expected the mages to take up arms, fight back.